The boom was not the sound of artillery or the thunder of collapsing cities. It was smaller, sharper, and infinitely more cruel. The single concussive crack of a plasma pistol discharging into the fragile body of a child. The noise cut through the ceremonial plaza like the ripping of paper in a silent church. It left behind a hole in the air, an unfinished sentence, and in that hollow silence lay the seed of humanity's wrath. The Galactic Empire had staged a parade to remind its citizens of dominance, discipline, and order. The plaza was draped in banners of silver and crimson, and thousands of beings from 100 species stood in tight rows, instructed to cheer when prompted, to bow when commanded, to applaud the symbol of power embodied in General Vurok. He was a towering reptilian creature with scales polished to a metallic sheen, metals covering his armored chest, and a voice accustomed to commanding fleets. He carried himself as if gravity bent differently for him, as if the air itself parted in deference. The child had been brought forth as a curiosity, a captured human from one of Earth's remote colonies. She was small, 8 years old perhaps, and dressed in the simple cotton tunic she had been wearing when taken. Her dark eyes searched the crowd with bewilderment, not fear, because she had not yet learned that the galaxy had no pity for innocence. The audience was told this was a lesson in obedience, that the humans were weak, sentimental, laughably fragile, and that their offspring served as evidence. When the general raised his sidearm and pressed it against her temple, some in the crowd chuckled. Others hissed nervously. One senator turned away. And then the boom came, and with it the collapse of one fragile body onto the cold stones of the plaza floor. The crowd froze. No one moved, no one spoke. The banners fluttered in a weak wind. The body lay still, too light to thud, too final to be ignored. In the silence, General Vurok smiled with his jagged teeth and proclaimed, "Thus ends the illusion of humanity's future." At the edge of the platform stood Jameson Ward, Earth's ambassador. His posture was impeccable, hands folded neatly before him, chin lifted just enough to convey polite attention without arrogance. His hair was graying at the temples, his suit cut from fabric that looked ordinary but contained subtle weaves of protective fibers. He was a man out of place. Humans were rare in the Empire's core, rarer still in ceremonial gatherings, but he had cultivated an image of civility, almost of harmlessness. Aliens had learned to think of him as charming, with his constant habit of offering tea during negotiations and his infuriating supply of idioms no one fully understood. In that moment, however, the charm melted into something harder. His smile remained, but the temperature of it changed, like a hearth that had gone cold though the embers still glowed beneath the ash. His gaze lingered on the lifeless child, and then on the general, and then on the senators who had allowed this display. "You've made your point," Jameson said softly. The translator device at his collar rendered the words in a dozen alien tongues, each carrying a slightly different flavor, courteous, resigned, but edged with iron. Clarity is always appreciated. On Earth, we have a saying, "Don't poke the bear while it's sleeping." I imagine you'll learn why soon enough. The general barked a laugh. "Your species is irrelevant. You were given a seat at this council out of charity, not merit. You are tolerated, nothing more." This, he gestured with the weapon still steaming, was an insect swatted before it bred. Nothing more. Polite applause scattered through the plaza, forced and uneven. Some cheered to avoid suspicion. Others remained silent, the weight of unease pressing down like an invisible hand. Somewhere in the upper terraces, a feathered alien senator leaned to his companion and whispered, "He has no idea what he's done." Jameson inclined his head slightly, as though accepting the general statement like one might accept a poor glass of wine. "Yes." "Nothing more," he repeated, but the words slid across the air like a blade unsheathed in slow motion. His hands remained folded, but his knuckles whitened. The moment stretched, and for the first time, some in the crowd realized the human was not retreating, not apologizing, not trembling. He was marking a line. Later, no one would remember how the ceremony concluded. The rest of the speeches blurred into noise. The only thing remembered was that sound, that boom, and the stillness that followed. That evening, the Imperial Council convened in private chambers high above the city. Senators of scaled, feathered, and crystalline descent debated whether the general had been too theatrical, whether the humans might complain formally. Some dismissed it outright. "They will write letters, beg for apologies," sneered one. "They always try words first." "They always smile first," another countered, unease thick in her throat. "And when they stop smiling, galaxies burn." Jameson attended the council session, as protocol demanded. He arrived precisely on time, carrying under one arm a leather-bound folder stamped with Earth's insignia. When offered water, he politely declined, producing instead a small tin of tea bags from his pocket. Steeping them in hot water, he requested be brought. The chamber filled with the faint scent of chamomile, incongruous against the metallic tang of alien air recyclers. "Ambassador Ward," began the presiding chancellor, "it is regrettable that one of your kind perished today. An unfortunate demonstration, perhaps overly zealous, but let us not exaggerate the meaning of one child's death." Jameson stirred his tea with slow precision, then looked up. His eyes were calm, but there was no softness left in them. "Regrettable," he echoed. "On Earth, when a child is killed, we do not call it regrettable. We call it war." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A crystalline senator clattered in protest. "Surely you jest. Your people have neither the fleets nor the weapons to wage war against the Empire. We span 1,000 systems. You barely hold your own moon." Jameson smiled faintly, as though amused by a child's arithmetic. "Yes, we are young. We are small. We enjoy baseball and barbecue and making jokes at funerals. We watch fireworks and mistake them for stars. But you see, none of that matters. What matters is this. We are very good at remembering when someone touches our children. We don't forget, ever." The chamber grew tense. Some scoffed, others shifted uncomfortably. A few glanced at the absent general, who had not been invited to this session, perhaps deliberately. Jameson continued, his tone still courteous, still threaded with humor, but carrying an undertow of promise. "We have another saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. You may think we are small. You may think we are outnumbered. But what you witnessed today was not the death of one human child. It was the birth of your mistake, and mistakes cost dearly." He sipped his tea, letting the silence breathe. No one dared interrupt. When he set the cup down, he leaned forward just slightly, enough that the translator carried the weight of every syllable into every alien ear. "You should prepare yourselves, not for negotiations, not for reparations, for what happens when humanity stops smiling." The session ended in chaos. Some demanded sanctions. Others urged caution. A few wise ones whispered that the Empire should begin peace overtures immediately. But their voices were drowned by the laughter of those too arrogant to believe the threat was real. Jameson walked back to his quarters alone. He stood before the viewport that overlooked the city, lights glittering across its spires like 1,000 jeweled daggers. He let the image burn into memory, because he knew it would not last. He reached into his folder and withdrew a small, encrypted datapad. With a calm press of his finger, it came alive, displaying secure channels linked to Earth's hidden networks. He tapped a single command, simple and clean. Across the void, lights blinked on in places no one expected, deep in asteroid belts, beneath icy oceans, on moons thought barren, on stations thought abandoned. Engines stirred, cannons hummed, codes awakened. The sleeping bear shifted. Jameson closed the pad, returned it to the folder, and exhaled once through his nose. His voice was soft, barely a whisper, but it carried the promise of what was to come. They wanted clarity. Let's give it to them. The council chamber was circular, its ceiling rising into an ornate dome carved with the sigils of conquered worlds. Golden light streamed through latticework windows, catching on banners of crimson and silver. The air was heavy with perfume and power, the kind designed to suffocate dissent. Seated around the great obsidian table were the voices of the Empire, each senator cloaked in the finery of their species, each voice accustomed to dominance. Jameson Ward sat at the far end, human among giants, framed by a chair that seemed deliberately oversized, as though to remind him he did not belong. His leather-bound folder rested neatly before him. Steam curled from a porcelain cup of tea at his elbow, the faint fragrance of chamomile drifting into the hall. He seemed, at first glance, the least threatening creature in the room, A diplomat, soft-spoken, unfailingly polite. Yet there was an unsettling steadiness in his posture, as though he were less a guest than a quiet observer at a play whose ending he already knew. The Chancellor, a serpentine creature whose scales shimmered like molten bronze, opened the session. Ambassador Ward, we regret the unfortunate demonstration at yesterday's parade. It was not intended to cause undue alarm. Surely you recognize the necessity of discipline. Jameson stirred his tea slowly. The sound of the spoon against porcelain was delicate, deliberate. He looked up, his eyes calm, his expression composed. On Earth, he said softly, when someone murders a child in broad daylight, we do not call it a demonstration. We call it a beginning. The chamber rippled with murmurs. A crystalline senator clattered, indignant. Hyperbole. Humans exaggerate. You lack the fleets, the weapons, the will. One death does not constitute war. Jameson smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth bending in a way that might have been amusement. One death does not. But this one does. You see, you didn't kill a child yesterday. You ignited a fuse. A scaled general slammed his clawed hand on the table. Your world cannot stand against us. We span 1,000 systems. You barely manage a single rock and a pale satellite. Jameson folded his hands neatly. Yes. We are young. We are small. We spend too much time arguing about sports and grilling meat in our backyards. But we have long memories. We remember insults. And when you harm our children, we do not rest. We do not negotiate. We end it. Laughter broke out from several corners. A bloated, aquatic senator burbled. You intend to frighten us with folk sayings? Pathetic. Not sayings, Jameson replied. Warnings. He lifted his tea, inhaling the aroma as though savoring a private joke. For example, on Earth we say, 3 strikes and you're out. Yesterday was strike 1. Confusion stirred. The translators rendered the phrase awkwardly. Some heard it as 3 attempts before execution, others as count of failures. The senators muttered among themselves. What is strike 2? Asked a feathered delegate cautiously. Jameson set the cup down with quiet care. Strike 2 is when we stop pretending we are harmless. The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. Are you declaring war, Ambassador? The room held its breath. Jameson's voice remained gentle, almost conversational. Not declaring. A declaration would imply permission. I am informing you. Earth is at war with the Galactic Empire. The silence that followed was immense, a vacuum into which every heartbeat seemed to fall. Then, incredulous laughter. Crystalline senators chimed in sharp chorus, aquatic voices bubbled, reptilian generals bared teeth. The sound swelled like a storm of derision, and still Jameson sat unmoved, sipping tea, as though nothing extraordinary had been said. At last, a wise elder of the Avari, an avian species with wings folded in shimmering cloaks, spoke above the noise. His voice was brittle with age. You mock, but you do not understand. I have studied their history. These humans are not like others. They will smile while sharpening knives. Paranoia, spat a scaled general. They are insects. Perhaps, the Avari replied, but even insects bite when cornered. And this one, I think it was never cornered at all. The laughter faltered. Unease spread like a chill draft. Jameson leaned forward slightly. His voice was quiet, yet every translator carried its weight into the ears of the assembly. You've mistaken patience for fear. You've mistaken courtesy for weakness. You've mistaken humanity for prey. That was your error, and errors have consequences. A senator hissed, your kind will be ashes before your threats are realized. Jameson tilted his head. Ashes? Possibly. But have you ever considered what burns with us? The words hung like smoke. Even those who scoffed felt the undercurrent, the sense that the human was not bluffing, not posturing, but stating a fact as immutable as gravity. Then the first reports arrived. Small datapads at the senators' sides lit with alerts, their screens flashing crimson. Muted alarms hummed. One by one, alien faces stiffened. Ships destroyed in a remote sector. Communications blacked out in another. Supply depots gone silent. Jameson continued sipping his tea, perfectly timed to their growing unease. He did not glance at their screens. He did not need to. "What is this?" demanded the Chancellor. "Sabotage? Pirates." "Strike two," Jameson murmured. The chamber erupted. Voices clashed, accusations hurled. Some demanded military mobilization at once. Others insisted it was impossible for humans to strike so quickly, so precisely. The Avuri elder shook his head, feathers trembling. "I warned you," he whispered, though none listened. Jameson waited, patient as a priest at confession. When the noise finally ebbed, he spoke again. "We don't want your territory. We don't want your tribute. We don't even want revenge. We want justice. And if that means the empire crumbles into dust to pay for one child's blood, then so be it." A crystalline senator sneered. "Justice? You dare speak of justice while launching attacks without warning." Jameson's smile was almost tender. "On Earth, we knock before entering a home. But when someone breaks into ours and murders a child, we do not knock on the way out." The chamber fell still. Outside the windows, the city glimmered as always, unaware of the shifting tides. The empire still believed itself eternal. Yet the unease now rooted in their hearts was undeniable. The Chancellor tried to recover authority. "This is madness. You cannot fight us. Your people will be annihilated." Jameson closed his folder, aligning its edges with meticulous care. "Perhaps. But you misunderstand the nature of our struggle. We are not trying to survive. We are ensuring you do not." The words landed like stones dropped into deep water, sending ripples outward. Even the most arrogant shifted uncomfortably. The Avuri elder rose on trembling legs. "I will not support this. I move that we sue for peace before it is too late." Roars of objection drowned him. Pride and arrogance blinded the chamber, each senator convinced of the empire's supremacy. Jameson gathered his folder, lifted his cup, and stood. His voice was the last to cut through the cacophony. "On Earth, we say, don't start what you can't finish. Yesterday you started. Today we continue." Tomorrow he let the pause stretch, his gaze sweeping the room with calm inevitability. "Tomorrow you learn what it means when humanity finishes." With that, he turned and walked from the chamber. No guards moved to stop him. No senator dared. The doors closed behind him with a sound like a coffin ceiling. In the corridor beyond, the silence pressed close. Jameson exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of history shifting. He tapped his datapad once more. Hidden codes leapt across subspace, activating protocols seeded years before. On distant worlds, human fleets emerged from shadows, vessels hidden in asteroid belts, camouflaged on barren moons, buried beneath oceans. Engines flared. Railguns charged. Soldiers tightened their gear, humming songs older than the empire itself. The war had already begun. Back in the chamber, the senators argued themselves hoarse, blind to the truth that their laughter had already cost them their future. They still believed humanity could be crushed with enough force, enough fire. They had not yet realized that humanity had never planned to fight fair. In the viewport of his private shuttle, Jameson Ward watched the city recede. Lights sparkled across the spires, proud and complacent. He sipped the last of his tea, the taste bitter and floral. His reflection gazed back at him, eyes steady, smile faint. He whispered to the empty cabin, a phrase not meant for translation, a phrase that belonged only to Earth. "This is for her." The engines roared, carrying him toward the gathering storm. And deep in the void, where shadows concealed sleeping giants, humanity's true face began to stir. The first screams of the Empire's pride came not from battlefields, but from starports, quiet stations, and the margins of neglected systems. A mining colony awoke to find every Imperial garrison stripped of weapons, their officers bound and gagged with restraint scavenged from their own armories. A fleet mustering in the Herrick sector discovered half its cruisers missing, vanished overnight into the black, their transponders now pulsing with mocking human broadcasts of old Earth songs, crooning voices from a century past drifting across encrypted channels. By the time the Empire realized this was no scattered sabotage, it was already too late. The humans had moved faster than the galaxy believed possible. They had hidden their teeth, buried in shadows, in rocks, in oceans. Now those teeth were bared. Jameson Ward did not watch the first reports with triumph. He watched them with the quiet patience of a man who had predicted every note of a symphony and was simply listening as the orchestra caught up. He sat aboard his shuttle, drifting between rendezvous points, sipping tea while holoscreens flickered with chaos. The Empire's admirals barked orders, their fleet scrambling. Yet their comm channels were already compromised, their supply lines already bleeding. "Strike two," Jameson murmured, echoing his words from the council. The datapad before him listed intercepted reports. An Imperial shipyard in the Joral system reduced to twisted wreckage by a swarm of outdated human vessels. An orbital fortress overrun by Marines who had supposedly never left their homeworld. What unnerved the Empire most was not the destruction itself, but the precision. Humans struck only where it hurt most. No wasted shots. No blind charges. Every move carried the chill of calculation. On one screen, an alien admiral bellowed in disbelief. "They have no fleets in this quadrant. No jump capability at this scale." His aides scrambled, muttering theories about mercenaries, rogue allies, anything but the truth. The admiral slammed a fist on the table. "They are ants. How are ants in my pantry?" The image cut to static, replaced by the face of a young Marine with a grin too wide for the circumstance. His helmet hung loose, and behind him, sparks flew as Imperial officers were herded into restraints. "Hey there, Empire," the soldier said. "Name's not important. Just wanted to say thanks for building us such nice ships. You really shouldn't leave the keys lying around." He winked, then cut the feed. The galaxy laughed nervously at first. Surely this was bravado, a stunt. But the laughter curdled when reports multiplied. Fleet after fleet humiliated. Fortresses breached. Colonies liberated. The Avuri elder, who had warned the council, sat alone in his chambers, watching the chaos unfold. He whispered to himself, "They're smiling. Gods help us all, they're smiling." Human ingenuity became legend overnight. Old satellites, once dismissed as junk, were revealed as cloaked platforms armed with kinetic projectiles. Civilian freighters sprouted hidden cannons, their cargo containers converting into missile racks. Even the moons of forgotten worlds had been seeded with railguns disguised as mining equipment. Every object the Empire had ignored became a weapon in human hands. On one battlefield, Imperial commanders watched in horror as their massive dreadnought was boarded, not by precision strike teams, but by what appeared to be an undisciplined mob of humans wielding makeshift gear. They stormed the ship singing an old Earth tune, their voices ragged, off-key, but relentless. "Country roads, take me home," echoed down the corridors as Marines cut through resistance with terrifying efficiency. The dissonance between their humor and their violence broke the will of seasoned veterans. Jameson listened to the after-action reports, fingers steepled. Singing in battle, he mused aloud. Effective, terrifying, and various. The Empire reeled. Panic spread not only through their military, but through their citizenry. Whispers carried in marketplaces, in academies, in temples. The humans are not weak, the humans are predators. Some species began to reconsider alliances. Merchants cut deals in secret with Earth envoys, offering supplies in exchange for safety. Old rivals of the Empire suddenly found courage, emboldened by the rising shadow of humanity's wrath. Yet, amidst the victories, Jameson knew restraint mattered. The objective was not slaughter for its own sake, it was control, leverage, inevitability. So, he tempered the fury. Civilians were spared, infrastructure captured rather than annihilated. Every act of violence was measured, pointed. Humanity was not raging blindly, it was teaching. Still, the humor remained, sharp as broken glass. Broadcasts appeared on Imperial channels with absurd taunts. A captured starport blared recordings of human comedians, their sarcasm utterly incomprehensible to alien ears, but dripping with menace. A fleet flagship hacked its own loudspeakers to project a drawling voice. "Y'all messed with the wrong family." The phrase translated poorly, but the intent was clear enough. The Chancellor of the Empire addressed his people in desperation, assuring them the rebellion would be crushed. His words fell hollow when, mid-speech, the lights in the chamber flickered and screens across the Empire lit with a simple message: Strike 2. Jameson watched that moment with the faintest trace of satisfaction. The enemy still clung to arrogance, still underestimated. But cracks were showing. Fear was blooming. And fear was fertile ground. A private transmission arrived from an imperial senator, cloaked in secrecy. The voice trembled. Ambassador Ward, my colleagues are fools. They will not negotiate, but I will. Spare my worlds, and I will. Jameson closed the channel before the offer could finish. There would be time for such bargains later. Now was the time for clarity. He recalled the child's face, the bewildered innocence before the boom, and let that memory guide him. Every order he gave, every strike approved, carried that image. Not vengeance alone, but justice sharpened into steel. In the corridors of power, alien whispers turned into dread proclamations. They laugh while they kill, said one. They sing songs no one understands. They fight as though they'd been waiting centuries for this. And perhaps they had. The Empire's admirals gathered at last, convening in their grand war hall, a chamber carved from black stone veined with gold. Holograms of battlefronts flickered overhead, each marked by red scars of human strikes. The generals argued furiously, some insisting the humans were aided by hidden allies, others convinced this was sorcery or trickery. Not one dared admit the obvious, that Earth had been preparing all along, hiding wolves among sheep. Into this hall strode General Vurok, the executioner of the child. His armor gleamed, his eyes burned with fury. Enough of these cowardly excuses, he snarled. They are insects. Crush them under heel. Assemble the full fleet. We will drown their rock in fire. The room rumbled with approval. Pride still reigned, blinding them to reality. Yet as they planned, reports kept streaming in. Human strikes faster than any mobilization could counter. Worlds once loyal to the Empire slipped away. Soldiers deserted. The aura of invincibility was crumbling. Jameson Ward was informed of the Council's decision aboard a captured Imperial cruiser. He listened, hands folded, expression serene. Good, he said simply. Let them come. They still believe this is their war to win. Let's show them otherwise. A junior officer frowned. Sir, do we have the strength to meet their full armada? Jameson smiled, that same unsettling smile that had silenced the Council days before. Strength? Perhaps not. But strength is never the whole game. Did they think we would play fair? He stood, gazing at the starlit void. Behind him, screens displayed the mobilization of humanity's fleets, ragtag and formidable. Every ship bristling with hidden teeth. Farmers turned pilots, miners turned gunners, engineers turned saboteurs. Each carried not only weapons but songs, jokes, defiance. The war was no longer a question of survival. It was transformation. Humanity had stepped from the shadows with a grin and a knife, and the galaxy would never unsee it. Across the Empire, fear crystallized into a single phrase whispered in markets, barracks, and temples alike. The humans are smiling. And deep in the void, far from any world, a vast region of space shimmered with hidden energy signatures, long prepared and never revealed. Humanity's true trap waited, silent, patient, inevitable. Jameson Ward closed his eyes, letting the hum of the cruiser's engines wash over him. He thought of the child again, of the boom that had started everything. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of inevitability. Strike 3 is coming. The Empire gathered its might with the fury of a wounded beast. From every corner of its 1,000 worlds, ships poured into the void. Dreadnoughts like floating cities, cruisers bristling with cannons, carriers that birthed wings of fighters like swarms of hornets. It was the largest armada in recorded history, assembled not merely to crush a rebellion, but to erase a species. The humans, they told themselves, would be extinguished in a single decisive blow. General Vurok stood at the command bridge of the flagship, his scales gleaming beneath the glow of tactical projections. His voice roared across comms, promising vengeance and glory. We will burn their homeworld until no stone remains, until the last child screams into ash. The fleet howled in approval, pride masking the undercurrent of unease that had begun to spread. For every officer who cheered, Another whispered of strange human victories, of sabotage no one could explain, of colonies vanishing without fire or sound. Still, the command was absolute: advance. Far away, Jameson Ward waited. He stood on the observation deck of a captured cruiser, hands clasped behind him, the leather folder resting on a nearby console. Below, engineers and soldiers bustled, their movements efficient, unhurried. The void outside shimmered with starlight, but within that starlight lay secrets, the patient arrangements of a trap decades in the making. He closed his eyes briefly, remembering the child's face. Not the death itself, but the innocence that had preceded it. That memory burned like a compass, pointing him toward what must be done. He opened his eyes, calm once more, and spoke softly to the room. "They're coming, right where we want them." Signals whispered across subspace, invisible threads binding humanity's hidden arsenal. Entire asteroid fields shifted, revealing railguns the size of mountains. Dead moons awakened, their craters peeling open to reveal concealed missile silos. Oceans boiled as submerged platforms rose, ancient and patient, to bear their weapons to the sky. Every piece had been set in place long before the Empire ever thought humans worthy of notice. When the Imperial fleet arrived, they entered what appeared to be an empty sector, a barren expanse, dust and silence. They deployed in perfect formation, dreadnoughts forward, carriers rear, escorts surrounding them like armored teeth. It was a display of supremacy, a warning made of steel and fire. "Where are they?" one admiral growled, scanning the void. As if in answer, Jameson's voice slipped onto their comm channels, translated in a dozen tongues. "Welcome, honored guests. You've come so far. We do hope the journey was comfortable." Vurok snarled. "Ward, show yourself, coward." "Oh, I intend to," Jameson replied, polite as a host greeting late arrivals. "But first, a small courtesy. On Earth, we have a rule: guests should never arrive empty-handed. So allow us to provide refreshments." The trap snapped shut. From the asteroids, from the moons, from the shadows themselves, humanity's arsenal roared to life. Railguns fired slugs at near relativistic speed, tearing through capital ships as though they were made of glass. Missile swarms streaked across the void, guided not by computers alone, but by human instinct encoded into their flight paths. Fighters, cobbled together from freighters and scavenged wrecks, erupted in impossible maneuvers, juking and spiraling in ways no alien pilot could predict. The Empire's formation shattered in seconds. Ships that had stood unchallenged for centuries erupted into fireballs, their crews screaming across fractured channels. Admirals bellowed orders that went unheard, drowned in static and chaos. The pride of 1,000 worlds was undone not by superior numbers, but by the simple truth. Humanity had been planning this moment far longer than anyone realized. On the flagship, Vurok's claws gouged the railing. "It's an ambush. Fight back, damn you." They did fight. Imperial cannons answered, ripping through human ships, shattering hulls, scattering debris. Humanity bled, but humanity did not falter. For every vessel lost, another emerged from hiding. For every blow absorbed, 10 more returned. They laughed as they fought, Marines broadcasting jokes even as they boarded dreadnoughts, their voices cutting through fear like blades. One transmission, captured across a dozen channels, became infamous. A squad of Marines storming an Imperial hangar, singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," while mowing down resistance. The absurdity broke the will of defenders more surely than fire. On his cruiser, Jameson listened to the chaos. His officers awaited orders, their eyes sharp. He lifted his folder, opened it with care, and withdrew a final datapad. He tapped a single command. The dead moons revealed their true secret. Buried deep within them were colossal rail cannons, hidden for decades, powered by reactors stolen, scavenged, or built in secrecy. With one synchronized volley, they unleashed destruction unseen in galactic history. Entire battle groups vanished in incandescent storms. The void became a graveyard. Vurok's voice thundered over comms, desperate now. "You'll destroy yourselves with us. This is madness." Jameson responded with the same gentle humor he had used in the council. "On Earth, we say, if you're going down, take the bully with you. But you misunderstand, General. We are not going down." The Imperial flagship shuddered under impact. Fires raged along its hull, alarms shrieking. Vurok roared, ordering retaliation, but his bridge crew hesitated. Fear clung to them like smoke. They had seen the smile in Jameson's voice, the certainty that this was no reckless gambit. This was victory unfolding. Across the galaxy, broadcasts carried fragments of the battle. Civilians watched in disbelief as the once invincible armada was torn apart. Some cheered quietly, daring to hope for freedom. Others prayed, terrified of what these humans truly were. And still the humans fought with restraint. Civilian ships were spared, colonies bypassed. The message was clear: this was not conquest. This was retribution. At last, the flagship's defenses failed. Human marines breached its hull, storming corridors with relentless precision. They reached the bridge, weapons leveled, faces grim but steady. Vurok bared his teeth, snarling, refusing to kneel. Into this moment stepped Jameson Ward. He crossed the ruined threshold, immaculate despite the chaos, his folder tucked neatly under one arm. He regarded the general with the same calm he had shown at the execution plaza. "General Vurok," he said quietly, "on Earth we have another saying. Don't write checks your body can't cash." Vurok lunged, claws extended. A single shot rang out. He fell, his body crumpling at the feet of the man he had dismissed as harmless. The bridge fell silent. The surviving officers stared at Jameson, waiting for what would come next. He let the silence linger, then spoke, his voice low but carrying the gravity of judgment. "You killed a child to prove a point. This is ours. Humanity does not start fights. We finish them." He looked around the bridge, meeting each pair of alien eyes. "Tell your empire, the war is over. Extinction or surrender. Choose." The officers lowered their weapons, some dropping them entirely. The fear in their eyes was no longer of death, but of survival under humanity's gaze. Jameson turned away, his work unfinished but inevitable. The galaxy would never forget this day, the day the Empire's teeth were broken by a species that smiled while bearing its own. As he departed the bridge, he paused at the viewport. The battlefield stretched beyond, wreckage drifting, fires burning, silence heavy. And amidst that silence, humanity's ships moved with the calm of predators finished feeding. Jameson whispered to himself, too soft for others to hear. For her. The child's memory lingered in the stars, woven into the ashes of the Empire. Humanity had shown its teeth, and the galaxy finally understood. But in the quiet aftermath, as Jameson returned to his cruiser, another message pulsed across hidden channels. A code he had prepared long ago, a final contingency. He read it once, then closed the pad. The war was not finished. Not yet.